Okay, guys, I'm super excited to announce the guy that got fired for truth, we rehired for truth. His journey continues today. I'd like to introduce to you guys Pastor Nate Wolfe.
All right, I want to thank you guys for coming. I'm very excited about this talk. Thank you, love you too, Rick. You can blame Rick for a lot of this because he was one of the first folks I called after I got fired, and when I got off the phone with Rick, you remember what you told me? He's like, "I'm gonna call everybody I know, Robbie, Schema, all these guys." He's like, "Everybody needs to hear about this." He's like, I'll call you back in a few hours." I was like, "Okay," and that was like explosion. Okay. I know the PowerPoint is a little hard to see, and the reason is because I think the switch for the lights turns off all the lights. So we've got some film going on here, so we don't want to mess with the lighting. So if you can't see my PowerPoint and you would like me to email you a copy of it, just give me your email address. I'll send you the whole PowerPoint. All right, working on about 5 hours of sleep, but adrenaline pump, right? And the spirit. All right. Okay. Well, my name is Nate Wolfe. If you're not sure about who I am and the testimony that I gave last night, you can watch the playback on the video. In a nutshell, 2017 spring, I got smacked by Robbie's documentary, A Global Lie, and went down the rabbit hole with Flat Earth and was preaching in the Toledo area for about 7.5 years. Found out about this conference in 2018, beginning of August, like less than a month before it happened. Wife said, "Man, we got to go check this out. It's only about an hour away." I said, "Yeah, let's do this." Came here, was blown away. We thought, okay, there's a reason why we came to this thing. We just knew it, but we didn't know what that was. What does that look like is what my wife always asks. What does that look like? And so we prayed. Okay, Father, if there's something you need us to do, we're willing, but we have no clue. We didn't want to move. We didn't want it to be us. We wanted to only do this if this was something that he said, go do this. And he answered that prayer 3 weeks later, not the way that I would have expected or hoped for, but got a text message on a Friday morning, a text message from the elders said, "In an hour, you'll be meeting with us at the building." An hour later, I was fired for association. But a lot has happened since that time, and I've been given a new ministry. And even though my family has been through some stuff, we've experienced some trauma and some loss and challenges, but we're far enough out now that we've seen a consistent faithfulness of the Father to take care of our physical needs, to help us with our emotional issues, and to just continue to fuel us on this journey. So I praise the Father for that. And I want to share a little bit of background here, but I've called this a journey to the Father's truth. Because most of you, if you know me, you know me as that flat earth pastor that got fired. But I think there's more to the story than that. And when we came to take on the world in 2018, one of the things that was amazing about the conference were the people. And everybody we met were very nice, and we just had a good feeling about the people here. But it didn't feel really like a conference. It felt more like a church fellowship or something, like a family. And of course, there's all these crazy, Torah observant people running around with these tassels and all kinds of stuff that I had no idea about. But I tell you what, there was something about the spirit in this place that was very attractive. And I told my wife, I said, "Well, I don't know what all this stuff's about, but these people seem to believe that it's the truth, and they have a joy about it." And it was different from what a lot of people told me. "Oh, well, stay away from Torah because it's this, that, and the other, and it's legalism." And I didn't see that. I'm like, wait a second. I'm going to go to the horse's mouth, right, and not what somebody says something is. And so we, for the last 10 months, have been on a journey, and I haven't been shy about it. Some of you that have followed my live streams, I've been saying for months, I'm going to vet this. I'm going to be a Berean and study this out. We're going to pray about it. We're going to talk about it. And if this is truth, we're going to follow it. If it's not, hey, we're not hurt because we've gone to the Word, we've tested something, we've discussed it with others, and we'll move on. But I want to share some background. So this presentation is really about that aspect of this journey. And I know for some of you that's going to be like a shocker. Some people saw me wearing seats yesterday, and some people cried and ran up and hugged me. And some people gave me a look like, what is Dave wearing? Where am I? But I want to start with the background a little bit of my life. I moved to Alaska in 1976, Anchorage, Alaska. I was 3 years old. My dad took a job up there, and so our whole family moved up there. And I grew up elementary school, middle school, high school, up in Alaska, a place of adventure. Did a lot of fishing, camping, outdoors kind of stuff. In high school, I met my wife, Jennifer. We had a mutual friend. I've been friends with him since fourth grade, and he approached me one morning. He was like, Nate, he's like, I want to go say hi to this girl named Heather at the locker. But she's got this friend named Jennifer who's always with her. And he's like, I don't want to go by myself. I need a wingman. So he says, if you go with me, I'll introduce you to Jennifer. I said, I got nothing to lose, man. Okay. So long story short, I got introduced to Jennifer. I really liked her from the start. And it took months and months to convince her that I was the one for her. But I asked her out to date twice. And the first 2 times she gave me the let's just be friends talk. But I didn't give up. The third time she said yes. So we dated, and I was a year ahead of her. So when I graduated high school in 1991, she's also my human Rolodex. She keeps me on these dates. She kept changing dates in my book because I'm like, and such happened. She's like, no, that wasn't that year. It was this year. I'm like, thank you, because I don't want to falsify information in my book, But we got married right out of high school. I waited a year and worked and just kind of hung around, waited till she graduated. We got married, went down to Searcy, Arkansas. Anybody ever heard of Searcy, Arkansas? About an hour north of Little Rock. Harding University, private Christian college. Got a bachelor's in Bible. My wife got a bachelor's in social work. And I'll show you a picture here. The college years. Young, and I was a little thinner and fitter back then. But we moved back to Alaska, and I actually had an emphasis on youth ministry. I had a Bible degree in the preaching and all that, but I really wanted to work with youth. And so we moved back to Anchorage, Alaska in 1996. And wouldn't you know, none of the churches that I had done some volunteer stuff with wanted to hire somebody. And there was these things called student loans that come due 6 months after you leave school. So I had to kind of go into the secular field. And so I still wanted to help people. I still wanted to work with families and children and all that. So I did some various work in that arena. I was a social worker for the state of Alaska for a few years. I also did investigations for child abuse and neglect and all that stuff. That was a tough job. And then I got a wild hair and decided I wanted to become a police detective because I had worked some cases. Whenever something was a potential felony, it also got referred to local law enforcement, not just the Division of Family and Youth Services. So some cases I would work with detectives. And I got to know this one detective named Dave, and he said, Nate, he's like, would you rather go to petition a magistrate to get something on behalf of a kid or to protect someone from a perpetrator, or would you rather go and arrest the bad guy and throw him in jail? And I was like, and carry a gun and drive fast in your car. And I was like, I'm doing this wrong. So I entered into the Anchorage Police Department Academy in 2000, did a 6-month academy. I did some field training and ended up, out on patrol. And that's a whole other story, but let me show you. Boy, there's a young Nate right there. I was just a kid. I was 28 years old. I was just a kid. But about 5 years after we moved back to Anchorage, and I was a cop, and I thought I'm going to be a Christian cop for 25 years and then retire and go camping and whatever else if I don't get shot. And I had a week or so where I felt off. Something was wrong in my spirit, and I couldn't focus on my job. And I'm like, you know what? My officer safety is terrible. I'm putting myself at risk because I'm not focused. I'm putting my fellow officers at risk. I'm putting the community at risk, I'm a nice guy, and I was well trained, but trust me, during that 2-week period, you did not want me helping you out because I just was not focused. And so I thought, what is going on? I got a phone call from an old friend in Arkansas, youth ministry buddy. And he calls me up one day and he goes, Nate, how's your faith? And I'm like, haven't talked to you in 5 years, and you say, how's your faith? Like, I thought, how gushy, how rude. But you know what? I'm thankful that he asked me that question. He got right down to brass tacks, you know. And I was like, well, you know, I'm doing this, that, and there. And he's like, well, why aren't you in ministry? And I'm like, well, you know, because God won't give me a job in ministry here. And it hit me after then a police lieutenant, he caught me after roll call and he's like, Wolfe, he's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, man. He's like, well, something is wrong with you, man. He's like, I don't want to cry. He's like, you got problems at home? I'm like, no, man, home's great. He's like, well, I'm taking you to lunch at 1 o'clock today. He's a lieutenant. You know, I'm a rookie. I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to lunch with you. So I went to lunch with him and he said, tell me your story and what's going on. I told him and he goes, I thought he was going to be upset. And he goes, it sounds to me like you know in your heart that you need to be in ministry. And he's like, I think you need to, you know, take a serious look at that. So I had the revelation. I'm like, I'm out. So the next day I quit the police. And my in-laws freaked out because they're like, man, you got this great salary, these benefits. Like, how are you going to take care of your family? They thought I was a loony. And I said, no, I know what I need to do. And I know that the Father is going to show me what that is. Within a week, I had a phone interview with a church in Midland, Michigan. And within a month, I was hired as a youth and family minister. So we moved from Alaska to Midland, Michigan, did that for 2 years, and then I got a bug for preaching. So we moved to Lewiston, Idaho, in the Snake River Valley, and I preached out there for 8 years. And then in 2011, we moved to Toledo, Ohio, and I began preaching there for a local congregation. But I'd always been a person who was open to truth seeking, and I always tried to check my own doctrine and teaching, and I was very concerned about the scripture that says that teachers will incur a stricter judgment. And not just a fear, but I wanted to be able to teach people the truth. I didn't want to invest my time, you know, being false, even if it was sincere falsehood, right? And so for over 25 years, I've dove into different subjects, and Jennifer can tell you, a couple times a year at least, I'd be reading 3 or 4 books on some subject that was out of the mainstream. And she'd brace for impact, you know, we'd have discussions. And sometimes whatever I discovered changed my view or our view. And sometimes I came full circle. I said, no, that's not biblical. No, I'm not going to change because the word says this. I always brought it back to the word, regardless of what other, you know, resources or man's opinion. I always brought it back to the word, and that was the final decision. So in 2017, I had a truth awakening. As many of you heard, I was preparing a lesson for a church in Michigan on the flood. They had invited me to come up, and they wanted me to show what was going on with the flood. So I prepared for that. I finished up a couple months early, and so I was on YouTube watching a few, you know, videos on the flood. And all of a sudden, this thumbnail pops up in the sidebar, and it's this global lie. And I'm like, global lie? That doesn't sound good. What is that? I had been in a mindset that year in some of my teaching and preaching. I had been exposing about Satan, about his influence, about deception, about truth. And so I was in the mindset that deception and lies need to be exposed. And so I think the Father knew exactly where I needed to be. And this was back when, of course, YouTube was going to give you the good stuff, right? It wasn't buried. It wasn't the false stuff. I watched this video, scripture after scripture after scripture, in this documentary. I'm just like, well, I don't know what's going on, but I can read scripture, and he's sharing truth, but I don't understand. How is this the truth? Like, I've read this 100 times, and what did I miss? So I finished the doc, and I'm writing scriptures down, and all of a sudden now I'm getting videos, recommendations that actually had flat earth in the title. And I'm like, flat earth, what's that? I had made the connection, Robbie. Just like, okay. So then I go down the rabbit hole. And after several weeks, Jennifer's down the rabbit hole with me. And we find out about this conference in 2018, and we make plans to come here. And man, it was crazy. I mean, always been a truth seeker, but Take on the World Conference blew us away, and we prayed a prayer when we left. Sunday night, 11 p.m. Okay, Father, what are we doing here? And we're willing, but we need you to show us because we're not going to move until you say move. So 3 weeks after the conference, September 14th, I'm coming in, waking up. I'm getting ready to go in on Friday morning. Got my sermon all ready for Sunday. It's been a great week. We've been in fervent prayer. I've been talking with different speakers. And I followed up with Chad Taylor, who had been praying for me. And he was like, hey, how's it going? And I get a text message, hey, in 1 hour you're meeting with all the elders at the church building. And I'm thinking, that does not sound good. I wasn't born yesterday. This ain't my first rodeo, and whatever other cliches you want to put in there. And I said, I called one of the elders, not the one who texted me, because I thought, I've known you for 7 years, and you're going to send me a text message, not even a phone call. I thought he's a chicken. I'm going to call somebody else. So I called this guy. I said, it sounds like this is an ambush, and I don't like ambushes. Oh, well, let me call you right back. Because I told him, I said, unless you tell me what this is about, I'm not coming to your meeting. Because I was to the point where, homie, don't play that. Remember that? And I was like, I've been fired once before in ministry, not for Flat Earth, and it was an ambush. And I told myself, I'm never going to allow someone to do that to me again. And so he calls me back after conferring with his buddies, and he says, I can't tell you what it's about. He says, we are all going to meet at the building at 9, and it's up to you if you want to show up or not. That's when I knew I was getting fired. I was like, if I don't show up and they don't care, that means I'm gone. But we went in. Jennifer was on her way to work. She whipped a UE in her car and probably drove back about 90 miles an hour. So some of you have been following me on social media and YouTube and even maybe Facebook since that happened. Some of you know who Con Ev Art is. He's done a lot of amazing art, and some of our beliefs don't coincide, but he's a decent guy. I'm going to show you a piece of art. He did a caricature of me right after I got fired. This one I just found on the internet. This one was not his work, but this is basically how it went. Yeah. Guess what? You're fired. Here's you. Here's the door. Oh, wait, turn in your keys and everything that belongs to us first. It took us 2 hours to move the books to my house, and some of you saw my garage video, which I played last night. But here's the artwork that he gave. It's kind of hard to see with the light, but I've lost 40 pounds since that. I wish he would redo. But here's the church, and here's somebody showing me the door saying, you're fired. And there's me with my boxes of books and my Bibles. But it's a different story. The sign on the lawn says, no flat earthers allowed. And then in small print, it says, the scared church. I was like, wow, this guy knows how to capture some stuff. Well, 2 days later, I went on several channels, including Celebrate Truth and Chad Taylor and others, and I shared my testimony. And things just started blowing up, and I'm just thinking, why is this a thing? More than one person's gotten fired, and Robbie said, you don't understand. I've talked to pastors who've been fired for actually preaching this. You never preached it. You just pulled into a parking spot with your wife on your vacation. You paid for it all yourself. It's not like you use the church credit card and live high on you ever go to Vegas, And he says, you're the only one that is saying, hey, I got fired for truth, and I'm speaking out about it. He says, you don't understand this now, but this is huge, and you'll see it down the road. He says, this is going to be an amazing journey. I'm like, okay, dude, I was still buckling up my seatbelt. But I had a YouTube channel my kids bugged me to start about 6 months before I got fired, and I was just doing Nephilim, giants, angels, and all that. Didn't talk about Flat Earth. And had 17 subscribers for 6 months, and I think half of those were my family, but I was tickled to death. Mark Keens was one of those subscribers. I think he was my first non-family subscriber. Found out that he was also in Ohio. But before I went on Robbie's channel, I said, you know what, I want to redo this because I want to capture what happened. And I came up with this Fired for Truth thing, and it just took off. And so a lot of people know me as Fired for Truth, but I'm really just Nate. I'm comfortable just being Nate. But I began speaking out. I began doing content on YouTube and going to meetups, and we started our own Flat Earth Toledo meetup. Some of you have been to regularly. And I've been speaking at conferences, and I started to also do a lot of ministry. I realized that I have a lot of one-on-one ministry with people in the truth community. And I thought, wait a second, this is bigger than videos and Flat Earth, but now I have a renewed ministry. And so we started doing all of these things and looking deeper into truths, And I felt like I was starting to understand some things about Sabbath and different things. And about 7 or 8 weeks ago, some of you might know Allison Shatter. She's here. She's from Michigan. I get this invite for a men's retreat from a lady friend of mine on Facebook, and I'm like, I got a men's retreat invite from Allison Shatter. Is she going to the men's retreat? Well, it was at Messiah's New Life Tabernacle in Avila, Indiana, near Fort Wayne. And they had a Shabbat service during the day, which everyone could come to. And then they had the men's thing. So I thought, I don't know why I'm going to this Messiah's New Life Tabernacle. Like, that's way out of the box, man. But I felt, again, I had that spiritual nudging. It was like, I need to be there. I didn't know why, but I need to be there. So my wife's like, call DR. DR Lee, raise your hand. My buddy Daryl. He is 20 minutes away from us in Toledo. And he's like, yeah, man, I'll go to that. And then he was scratching his head the whole time, and he revealed this to me later, but he's like, I'm the Torah observant guy. You're not. You don't keep the Sabbath. And you're inviting me to Messiah's New Life Tabernacle for a Shabbat service and a men's retreat. So they had a shofar out in the foyer there, and of course they blew the shofar before the sessions. But we had been in fervent prayer, and I had that weekend was the first Shabbat that I had purposed to do. And I felt like I understand, and I really desired it. And that was weird and scary for me, but I desired it. And Friday night, after sundown, I was feeling great. I woke up in the middle of the night. I felt this heaviness, this pressure in the room. I felt my face was flushed. I felt like I was almost like when you get the flu, you start getting shaky and you're achy, and it was weird. And I thought, I knew that I wasn't getting sick. Like, I had physical symptoms, but I knew that I'm not sick. What is going on? I look at the clock. The clock was exactly 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not superstitious, but I do understand the supernatural now. And I thought, ooh, this is a spiritual attack. I need to start praying right now. So I start praying fervently, and about 15 minutes into prayer, I'm thinking, I need to go wake DR up. I need some backup. But then all of a sudden, the heaviness started to leave. I started to feel better, and I said, well, it is 3 in the morning. I'm going to let my brother sleep. He chastised me lightly about that. You should have come got me. I was like, I probably should have. If I had continued, I probably went running into his room, and, that would have been awkward, because, like, I'm in my underwear, and he's asleep, and he's my friend, but we're just friends. So I had some experiences, not only that one, but the next day we went back to the hotel after the first day in the Shabbat service, and I noticed there was blood spots, like 5 or 6 of them, and a handprint or a face or something in blood on the curtains above my air conditioner. And I'm like, that was not there Friday night, because I'm a big, fat, hairy, sweaty guy. So when I check into a hotel, I crank the air up. And the air conditioning was right below the curtains. And I did not see any blood Friday night. But that blood was there Saturday afternoon. And so DR's like, man, this is weird. We need to get you out of here. And I'm like, well, let's just, change our stuff and rest up for 5 or 10 minutes. I said, and then we'll leave. Well, I started to pray about some things and reflect about the day at this men's retreat. And I started feeling that heaviness again. And now all of a sudden, I'm having like some kind of weird like asthma attack. Immediately, it was no symptoms. It was just like a light switch was flipped. My lungs were filling with fluid. I was wheezing. I was almost panicking. I'm thinking, if this gets any worse, I need to go to the ER, like now. So I went next door and I knocked on DR's door, and I must have looked a fright, because he opened the door and he's like, bro, are you okay? And I'm like, I was like, can you hear me? He's like, yeah, what's going on, man? I told him, he's like, you're out of there, man. He's like, grab your stuff, you're out of there. You stay in my room tonight. So we went downstairs to the very friendly but ditzy counter person, and he's like, we realized what room I was in too, and that freaked me out. He's like, Nate, give me your key. What room are you in again? And I'm like, 322. He's like, 322? I'm like, skull and bones. I'm like, And then he was talking to a relative of his who knows a lot about numbers and whatnot. And he was like, you got to get Nate out of there. He's like, he's already gone, but I want to know, what's 322? And there was silence. And he's like, what does 322 mean? And she's like, 322 means murder. And I'm just like, oh, man, I'm out of here. Anyway, in hindsight, as we were driving back, I said to him, I said, these are strong attacks, but they're also, for me, strong confirmations. This was the first Shabbat that I had purpose to do. And these attacks came between the sundowns of Shabbat. So I could go on about that, but one, Dr. Darrell Carr, I don't know if some of you have heard of him, but one of his talks, he was talking about going all in. He's like, what's holding you back? He's like, some of you here have some conviction about stuff, but you haven't pulled the trigger. And I'm like, oh, that's me. I'm used to being the preacher that somebody comes to afterwards and says, you were talking about me today, weren't you? I'm like, well, yeah, but no, I mean, like, there's 200 people here. But I thought, man, that's the message that I needed to hear. That's why I'm here. I have gone 95% in, but I'm not all in on what I know in my heart is true. And so now I talked with my wife, and my poor wife, you know, she's always having to be up to speed on whatever adventures Nate is on. And so she's a very patient lady, and I praise the Father for her. 27 years and 4 kids later, and they're almost all adults now, which makes me feel old. But the rest of my presentation, I want to share with you about what, you know, some of the scriptures that over these 10 months we prayed about and discussed. Jeremiah 29:13, and you shall seek me and find me when you shall search for me with all your heart. So this had to start and finish with an all heart thing. I always loved this verse, talking about the Bereans. For over 20 years, I wanted to be a Berean. I wanted to be somebody that when a person said, hey, this is what the scriptures say, I wanted to check it out for myself. And so I treated this no different than any other truth journey that I had been on, except for fervent prayer. There was fasting involved. There were some of these other amazing experiences that I had. How about this one? Most of us could probably quote this one in here. But I was like, all scripture. Now, when Paul wrote this to Timothy, what was scripture? Wasn't the New Testament. That was kind of like baked my noodle. I'm like, wait a second. All scripture is profitable for all these things? Like, okay. Man, I'm not even paying attention to the time.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, keep going. Preach on, brother. How about this one? Now, 2 years ago, I had struggled one day with this verse. Something struck me about this. I'm like, I was looking in my Bible software, and I'm like, first day of the week. And I look in the Greek, and it says Sabbaton. I'm like, I'm not a Greek scholar, but I know what Sabbaton means. It means Sabbath. And I'm like, first day of the week, but yet it's Sabbath in the original language. And of course, I went to some commentaries so they could explain what was going on. And they had an explanation for it, but it didn't sit right with me. I'm like, that sounds like a bunch of hooey. And so I prayed about it, and I studied, and I talked to my wife, and probably drove her crazy. And she's like, well, what are you going to do with this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm stuck. So I just dropped it. This was even like, it was right around the time that we came to Flat Earth, but it was way before all this other stuff. I didn't know what to do with it. I'm like, whatever. So then I heard one of Rob Skiba's talks, and he was saying the same thing. And he was showing in the book of Acts where almost all the other instances of Sabbaton was Paul was in the synagogue on the Sabbath. The Gentiles were there listening to Paul on the Sabbath. Sabbath, 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 Sabbath. But now all of a sudden it's first day of the week. Well, the word day is not even in the original language there. And the word that they translate first is probably better translated one of, on one of, or on the first of the Sabbath. So it hit me about 6 or 8 weeks ago. What most English Bibles have translated is not true. And I thought, wow, I waited almost 2 years to finally understand, what was going on. Well, we started talking with our kids. We had some dinners on Wednesday nights, and because our kids are going everywhere now, we said, look, we got to have at least one night where we can get everybody together. So we started sharing with the kids, and they've been through a lot this year, a lot of changes. The last thing we wanted to do was traumatize our kids because others have traumatized them. I didn't want to traumatize my kids further, right? But we also felt a burden that if this is the path that we're going to be on, we've got to bring them up to speed. But we wanted to have discussions and to share scripture. So we began sharing with them about the Sabbath. And what clinched it for me was people say, oh, well, that's for the Jews, Exodus 20. Well, yes, but no. I was back in Genesis, and I'm like, wait a second. The Sabbath was an actual day set apart. There were no Jews in this. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. And I'm always preaching to people saying, Genesis is the foundation. Genesis is the foundation. And so I'm getting smacked with Genesis is the foundation. And then, of course, I did go to Exodus 20, right? Remember the Sabbath. And when you look at this, it's the only commandment that says remember. And it's got the most coverage. It's several verses about it. I'm like, wow. And then this one got me. I'm like, man, Isaiah 66. And the context is the new heavens and the new earth. Well, as far as I know, we're not in the new heavens or the new earth yet. And it says, it shall come to pass from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another. Why didn't they, translate it? And from one first day of the week to another. Shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. And so it dawned on me, I'm like, yeah, we have Exodus 20, but we have Genesis 2, and we have prophecy. And the context is clearly new heavens, new earth. Man, I was blown away. How about this one? I've wrestled with this for years, even way before flat earth. I'm like, something just doesn't make sense. A lot of people translate this something like this. Think not that I have come to destroy the law of the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to destroy. This word, this word fulfill, it just has a different meaning than I ever realized. Man, I'm just preaching from the heart. I've ignored 2 pages of notes here, just looking at the PowerPoint. But another scripture that's related, and this is in English, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. Man, I believe that true. That was true. And I looked up that word for end. And do you know, even in the Strong's, the first definition, it can mean the end of something, but the very first definition, even in the Strong's, are you ready? To set out for a definite goal. To set out for a definite goal. So, think not that I came, to destroy the law and the prophets, but to fulfill. For Christ is the end of the law? No, Christ is the goal of the law. He came to show me how do I walk out the Father's Torah, the Father's instructions, right? When I say Torah, I'm not talking about what many different groups and camps version of it is, but I'm talking about actual instruction from the Word, right? So just to, don't brand me as this camp or that camp. I'm in the Father's camp. That's my goal. Context is key. What makes more sense? Christ, who came from the Father and came and said, I only speak what the Father told me to speak, and kept all the Father's commands, he came to end the Father's commands. I'm smacking myself here. I'm used to stepping on other people's toes in the sermon, but trust me, if you're feeling stepped on, my toes are throbbing right now because I'm stepping on my own toes. So I asked the question, and just a few more minutes here. Here's 1 John 2:6. He that saith he abideth in him ought himself also so to walk, even as he walked. I've read that hundreds of times. I was not walking I was walking as he walked in many ways, but I was not fulfilling this, I think, in the true full context. So how did Messiah walk? That begged the question. He walked in his Father's commands. He kept the Sabbath holy, set apart. He observed the feast days, and he walked in love. You know, Scripture also says that love is the fulfillment of the law, the commandments, the Torah. So we're not disconnecting. It's not this or this. It's together. It's like Ephesians, speak the truth in love. Some people want to just love, 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 and they don't care about the truth. Other people speak the truth, and they're jerks, and there's no love. And they're happy when people suffer, and they make videos about it on YouTube. How about this? Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. Man, I got smacked with this verse 1 billion times on Facebook Messenger. This one as well, Revelation 14:12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith in Jesus. Now, I was keeping a lot of commandments. I was actually keeping a lot of the Torah and didn't even realize it. But I wasn't keeping it in the full sense. And that's my own personal conviction. You know, I'm not chastising anybody here or trying to force you to do anything. I'm saying this is what we realize. This is what I realize. I'm just sharing my testimony. John 8:31 and 32, often quoted. If you continue in my word, which would include the commandments, right? The truth will make you free. So here's my question for you in closing. Where are you on this journey? I don't know why you're here, how you got here. Some of you on a wing and a prayer and gas fumes, but you made it. Some of you are thinking, I don't know how I'm getting home. I'm going to have to just stay at Beulah Beach all year. And all I'm saying is each one of us is on a journey or various journeys, multiple journeys. I didn't do it right or perfectly. I'm still not right or perfect on everything. But if I could give you two things, humble yourself and pray fervently. And if it takes months till you understand, take months. If it takes years, you know, is a proper understanding of Scripture worth the investment? Yeah, we study Scripture our whole lives. What's a few months? What's 10 months, you know? Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father except by me. So, a journey to the Father's truth. If I can be of encouragement to you, I'll do everything I can. I'll pray for you. I'll talk with you. But I'm asking for your prayers because this is exciting, but it's also scary. I mean, this is a huge shift, and there's a lot of responsibility. And I know that I'm going to be. I mean, someone's probably right now, if they're watching the live feed, they're already making a video against Nate Wolfe. But you know what? They've been making videos against Nate Wolfe for 6 months. So I came to the point at the men's retreat where I said, who am I trying to please? Am I trying to please subscribers? Am I trying to please other ministers? Am I trying to please whoever? I said, you know what? When I came to this truth and I had no fear whatsoever about what man would think, that's how I knew that I was finally all in. So I thank you guys so much. I don't know if I went over.
Was that recording the whole time? No. Because I didn't touch anything, and that's the screen that was up. Yeah. Okay, there we go.